Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 3. So that was it. Cultivators could use the power of heaven and earth to travel 1,000 miles in a flash. In less than half a day, the group had arrived at a small town near Shangqing sect. This was with Wenren lowering his speed to wait for Yin Hanjiang. Otherwise, he could have arrived within a quarter of an hour. Cultivation stages in this world were divided into 9 stages: Qi gathering, Qi refining, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, deity transformation, body unity, void boundary and Mahayana. Each stage was further divided into another 9 levels. After breaking through the 9th level of the Mahayana stage, the heavens would send down a heavenly tribulation, and if the cultivator passed that, then the cultivator would ascend into the immortal realm. It was said that immortals were also split into different stages such as Wandering Immortal, Heavenly Immortal, Golden Immortal, Great Golden Immortal, Immortal Lord and Immortal Emperor. After breaking through the Immortal Emperor stage, one could ascend to the Divine Realm. The Divine Realm was also split into countless stages, but no matter how much an ascended god cultivated, they could not surpass the primordial gods who were born alongside the universe. No matter how strong a cultivator was, they were only borrowing the power of the universe. For the primordial gods, the universe was their home, while the ascended gods were just lodging temporarily. The difference between them was massive. Devil Venerable Wenren was already recognized as the strongest among the demonic sects, but he was only at the 6th level of Mahayana stage. In the female lead's past life, she had been infinitely stronger than anyone else who appeared in the book. Yet she had actually given up her divinity to be with He Wenzhou. One couldn't blame Wenren for thinking that there was something wrong in her head. He even suspected that He Wenzhou had cast some sort of sorcery on her soul to control her, but the source-rouse arts of the cultivation world, no matter how strong, would all shatter the moment Bailey Qingmiao became one with her divine powers. They would be like a drop of poison in the ocean, or a wisp of miasma in a hurricane. In the face of absolute power, all the sorcery in the world amounted to nothing. Wenren was sitting on the 2nd floor of a tea house and sipping the tea that Yin Hanjiang had brought him as he pondered. This subordinate's powers are weak. He has wasted his lord's time. Yin Hanjiang didn't sit and was instead, standing at Wenren's back. No matter. Wenren indicated the seat next to him. Sit. Yin Hanjiang obediently sat next to Wenren. Without a command from his lord, he wouldn't sit, and if he was commanded, he wouldn't say empty words like "this subordinate doesn't dare." If Wenren ordered it, even if Yin Hanjiang didn't dare, he would still follow the order. Act natural, hide your aura. Right now, we're just 2 warriors from Wulin who know some martial arts, Wenren said, seeing Yin Hanjiang stiff back. If Wenren spoke once, Yin Hanjiang would move at once. He relaxed his ramrod straight back, though his muscles were still tense. Yin Hanjiang very rarely had eye contact with Wenren as he hardly lifted his head. He just held the teacup in his hand, watching the steam rise off it without drinking it. He was almost like a marionette, with no thoughts of his own. He only moved when Wenren commanded him to do something. Yin Hanjiang was only at the 1st level of body unity, yet at Xianyuan sect he ranked above all but one man. The weakest of the Hall Masters, Hall Master Yuan, was at the 9th level of body unity, and the other 3 were at the top of void boundary stage. Right Protector Shu Yanyan was also at the 6th level of void boundary stage. Amongst the top 6 in Xianyuan sect who served directly under Wenren, Yin Hanjiang was the lowest in cultivation stage. Technically, he should not have been the left protector. It was only due to his utmost loyalty and Wenren's trust in him that he was able to stand in such a high position. When Wenren pulled him out of a pile of corpses, Yin Hanjiang was barely breathing. He had been contaminated by the corpse miasma and half of his body was festering badly. No one would have thought that he was still alive. Even if someone knew he was still breathing, they wouldn't have tried to save him. Wenren had just happened to pass by at that time. With his keen sense of life and death, he discovered the dull-eyed Yin Hanjiang who was quietly waiting to die. Wenren He, who at the time was the leader of a small demonic sect, used his foot to move the corpse on top of Yin Hanjiang's body. Looking down at the child from up high, he said in an impassive tone, "I need a sword." Little Yin Hanjiang somehow worked up the strength to raise his small, thin arm and grab Wenren He's shoe. From then on, Yin Hanjiang became an emotionless sword that only Wenren He could brandish. His cultivation had developed in such a rapid pace that in just a decade, he had advanced to the body unity stage, which was even several times faster than Wenren He. But after reaching body unity stage, Yin Hanjiang cultivation had not advanced any further, stagnating for 100 years. Wenren He originally thought that body unity stage was Yin Hanjiang's natural limit, but the book clearly stated that the ghost mask was at the peak of Mahayana stage. This was also why Bailey Qing could never have guessed that Yin Hanjiang was the ghost mask. The first reason was because Yin Hanjiang always treated her so well that there was no way she could have doubted him. The second was that even though Yin Hanjiang had chanced upon some ways to advance his cultivation while protecting her, he was still only at the 9th level of body unity stage. Who would have guessed that the ghost mask, whose cultivations was at Mahayana stage, was actually Yin Hanjiang? At the later stage of the abusive love affair, Ghost Mask was already the most powerful person in the cultivation world. If it wasn't for his obsession to refine Bailey Qing into an everlasting lamp, he would have long attained a breakthrough and ascended. Bailey Qing had really been thrown into a cauldron to be refined by Ghost Mask, but her luck came through at the last moment and she managed to merge with her divine nature, releasing a burst of devastating power that instantly killed Yin Hanjiang. Yin Hanjiang was at body unity stage, but the Ghost Mask was at Mahayana stage. Theirs was a difference of 2 major cultivation stages between them. Wenren He looked at the side profile of his most trusted subordinate and said, "Hold out your hand." Yin Hanjiang offered his hand and Wenren He took hold of his wrist, pouring a stream of spiritual energy into his body through the meridian that connected to his heart. After a moment of investigation, he confirmed that Yin Hanjiang really was at the 1st level of body unity stage, without any adulteration. He had also gathered a large volume of spiritual qi in his danshan that he was unable to convert, about over 100 years of cultivation. He had probably forcibly gathered this unbearable amount of spiritual qi in order to break through, and had been suffering all this time. Were it not for the book, Wenren He would have never been able to understand his situation, and would have only assumed his natural aptitude was insufficient. It seemed that many plotlines in the book that looked unreasonable at first sight actually had logical explanations behind them. "How long has this been going on?" Wenren He asked. Yin Hanjiang avoided the question and instead said, "This subordinate will put all efforts toward making a breakthrough." Looking at him like this, a distant memory came to Wenren He's mind. When he took Yin Hanjiang back to his sect, his first priority then was to eliminate his enemy sects, so he left him at home to be taken care of casually and simply tossed him a cultivation manual for him to study on his own. 10 years later, when he returned to his sect, Yin Hanjiang had already grown into a tall youth and was hacking away with the sword again and again on the mountainside. The assignment Wenren He had left him 10 years ago was to cleave the waterfall in half, so he had been swinging his sword at it for 10 years. Persistence, resolute and loyal. These 3 words described everything about Yin Hanjiang. "Don't push yourself so hard," Wenren He had said. "You can take things slowly. This venerable one is already plenty strong." He thought that those words would reassure him, but who would have known that a trace of abandonment and grief would flash through Yin Hanjiang's eyes as he asked hoarsely, "Does my lord no longer need this subordinate?" Honestly, he was not really needed. Back then Wenren He wanted to unify the demonic sects and urgently needed talents under him. Now Xianyuan sect had great power and influence, with all the demonic sects were under Wenren He's heel. The 4 major hall masters as well as the left and the right protectors of the sect were all very loyal to him. Hence, he did not need someone, who was only at body unity stage, to protect him. The sword known as Yin Hanjiang had no chance to be unsheathed. Wenren he didn't answer him. He retrieved that brick of a book from his kinkin sleeves and opened it to a certain page. It was when Yin Hanjiang was protecting Bailey Qingmiao from Shang Qing's sex pursuers. Bailey Qingmiao said gratefully to him, "Yin Xiang, you've done so much for me." Yin Hanjiang held his sword in his lap, the firelight reflecting on his faintly smiling face. "You are the only person my lord needs the sword to protect." On first read, one would think that Yin Hanjiang had feelings for Bailey Qingmiao, using loyalty as an excuse to hide them. But reading through it again, Wenren he noticed the word sword. Wenren he had left the sword Yin Hanjiang unused for too long and only to pick it up again to ensure Bailey Qingmiao's safety. Why was Yin Hanjiang smiling then? It wasn't that he was in love with Bailey Qingmiao but because he was needed once again by Wenren he. Wenren he put the book away and once again looked at Yin Hanjiang. An unfamiliar bitter feeling arose in his heart. "This venerable one doesn't need a sword," he said in a cold tone. Yin Hanjiang's eyes gradually became lifeless as he withdrew his hands from the table and firmly grasped the sword on his waist. The book often described Yin Hanjiang as holding a sword. Once a cultivator reached foundation establishment stage, they could store their bonded weapon inside their bodies. Even at the qi refining stage, they could use kinkin pouch and other storage items. There was no need to hold their weapons all the time, yet Yin Hanjiang always had a sword in hand. Unbeknownst to Wenren he, his gaze had softened. He continued, "But this venerable one needs Yin Hanjiang." Yin Hanjiang grip on his sword loosened as he heard Wenren he's next words, "Back when we had just met, this venerable one did not trust anyone on this world. He only trusted Yin Hanjiang. My lord." Yin Hanjiang's words were hardly out of his mouth when he was interrupted by a woman in a thin white robe and a pipa in hand. She had walked up to the second floor, strumming the pipa and beginning to sing. Wenren he. Yin Hanjiang. This woman was Xu Yanyan. The two had gotten used to seeing her in revealing clothes that this proper and pitiful Xu Yanyan, who was like a white lotus flower that trembled in the wind, looked really strange to them. There were quite a number of guests sitting on the second floor. Xu Yanyan was the tea house's songstress. After she finished her song, she began to sell flowers. She was trying to be self-sufficient. She was not charging for songs, but she would sell flowers after singing. The income from selling flowers would still be split between her and the owner of the tea house, where 70% would go to the owner of the tea house and the remaining 30% to her. It was indeed a very pitiful situation. Wenren he took out a 10-tael silver piece and casually tossed it into the flower basket in front of Xu Yanyan. Xu Yanyan picked up the flower basket and slowly walked up to Wenren he. "Honored guest, this maiden is not selling songs but flowers," she said in a soft voice. "One basket is only 10 copper coins. There's no need to pay this much." She had 10 baskets of flowers at her feet. Even if she sold all of them, after splitting it with the owner, she would only have 30 coins for herself. If she saved for half a month, she could afford a taste of meat, and on the other days, she could only eat steamed buns. Wenren he didn't look at Xu Yanyan. He glanced at Yin Hanjiang and mentally transmitted to him, "Call me De Gur." Yin Hanjiang looked dazed, like he was in a dream. He spoke his lines woodenly from the script Wenren he had given him. "My lord De Gur gave it to you, so take it. Don't be ungrateful." When he said the word De Gur, Yin Hanjiang's ears turned bright red. This one appreciates these honored guests' generosity, but it's improper for this humble maiden to accept this much money. Xu Yanyan reached out her slender and ice-cold fingers, retrieved the silver piece from the basket and placed it on their table, bowing to them respectfully. What Wenren he was supposed to do was to toss the silver piece down the front of Xu Yanyan's robes and tell her, "Take it out right here and I'll accept it back," making her cry helplessly in the middle of the tea house. But he really didn't know how to do that sort of thing, and Yin Hanjiang didn't have any interest in that either, so the two of them only sat drinking their tea, ignoring Xu Yanyan. Xu Yanyan grew anxious at their lack of response. If they didn't humiliate her, how was she supposed to play the next part? She had already made plans for her subordinates to play the part, but the Venerable One wanted to participate in the action, so she had called off her subordinates and given the main role to him. She thought men all had these base urges, wouldn't any of them be happy to play this kind of role? But as it turned out, her lord wasn't that sort of person at all, and had no interest in bullying the weak. Aren't you a demonic cultivator? Can't you act a bit like one? Xu Yanyan saw that He Wenzhou and Bailey Qingmiao had already arrived outside the tea house. The audience had taken their seats but the stage wasn't set yet. This wouldn't do at all. She winked furiously at her lord until she was going cross-eyed. You do it, Wenren, he transmitted to Yin Hanjiang. He had decided to delegate more things to Yin Hanjiang in the future, to try and cure him of his "if my lord doesn't need me, I can just die" attitude. Upon hearing the order, Yin Hanjiang thought back to the script that Xu Yanyan gave him, and stared numbly at the beautiful young woman. He was supposed to pull open her robes and shove the silver piece down her bosom? In front of his lord? He felt extremely awkward, but his lord had given him an order. You can decide what to do yourself. No need to follow Xu Yanyan's script, Wenren, he transmitted, sensing Yin Hanjiang's distress. With Wenren He's permission, Yin Hanjiang's expression immediately relaxed. With a frosty and toneless voice, he said, if you insist on being ungrateful, then don't blame me for what I'm about to do. With that, he picked up Xu Yanyan with one hand and tossed her down from the second floor, having her fall directly in front of Bailey Qingmiao and He Wenzhou. Xu Yanyan. He Wenzhou saw a human figure fall from the sky and wanted to help, but Bailey Qingmiao was right next to him. He had just had a fight with Bailey Qingmiao back at the sect about his Lu Shimei and didn't want to provoke her temper again. Seeing this figure was a woman but not seeing her face, he decided not to act. On the other hand, Bailey Qingmiao saw a person falling from the second story and immediately leapt forward to save her. Xu Yanyan's plan was falling to pieces. She couldn't let herself be saved by Bailey Qingmiao. The one to save her should be He Wenzhou, embracing her in front of Bailey Qingmiao. So, Xu Yanyan hardened her resolve and used her spiritual energy to speed up her fall, so that Bailey Qingmiao's outstretched hand could only brush a corner of her clothes before she hit the ground. She even stealthily used her spiritual energy to wound herself, acting like the fall had seriously injured her. Bailey Qingmiao's fingers only clutched a piece of white fabric before she saw that frail woman slam into the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. She jumped down, kneeling by the woman's side and propped her up. "Miss, are you all right?" she asked with concern. When the woman turned her head, she discovered it was someone she knew. "Miss Xu," Bailey Qingmiao said in shock. He Wenzhou arrived just then. Seeing it was the poor girl he had saved several days ago and still felt goodwill for, he regretted not being there to rescue her. Xu Yanyan, who had taken the name Xu Lian, shed a single tear in her heart as she was held in Bailey Qingmiao's lap. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Going by her script, she was supposed to have been humiliated by one of the guests, so that He Wenzhou couldn't watch anymore and had to help, and then subsequently took off his outer robe to cover her disheveled clothes. Seeing another woman wearing her sweetheart's clothes, Bailey Qingmiao would be so jealous that she wouldn't be able to think straight and have a fight right then and there with He Wenzhou, pushing He Wenzhou to Xu Yanyan's side. He Wenzhou would escort her home, she would cry, He Wenzhou would hold her to comfort her. One thing would lead to another and things would get out of hand. Men, right? Why did it end up like this? Bailey Qingmiao took out a medicinal pill. She carefully pried the dying Xu Yanyan's mouth open and gave it to her. Normal people couldn't take the strength of the spiritual pills that cultivators used, so Bailey Qingmiao could only give her some medicine to strengthen her heart and internal organs. She would have to recover from her outer injuries and broken bones herself. After swallowing the pill, Xu Yanyan's deathly pale complexion improved significantly, and she couldn't go on pretending to be unconscious. She despondently opened her eyes. Staying in character, she said tearfully to Bailey Qingmiao, "Thank you, Miss Bailey." While falling, Xu Yanyan made sure to protect her face, only letting her forehead be struck so a drop of blood ran down it, to maintain the image of an injured beauty. That, combined with her expression, tugged at people's heartstrings. Too bad that currently, her face was being seen by Bailey Qingmiao with He Wenzhou standing behind her. Bailey Qingmiao had grown up at Shangqing sect and was taught to oppose bullies and protect the weak. Even if she usually had a temper toward He Wenzhou and had previously raised a fuss over him paying too much attention to Xu Yanyan, when it came to important matters, she could keep a level head. And she would never allow a frail woman to be hurt in front of her. With one arm around Xu Yanyan's waist, she leapt to the second story. After setting Xu Yanyan down on a chair, she glared at Wenren He and Yin Hanjiang. "Were you the ones who threw her off?" Xu Yanyan didn't dare to look at her lord. She turned her head away and pretended to cry. Wenren He put down his cup and looked at Bailey Qingmiao. In the book, the first time that Wenren He met Bailey Qingmiao was after he had encountered a problem in his cultivation right after he confronted the combined forces of the righteous sects, attacking the Xianyuan sect under the leadership of the Shangqing sect. He sustained serious injuries in that reckless battle and collapsed by a river. Bailey Qingmiao found him after being forced out by the rival female characters. She didn't recognize Wenren He and thought that he was a fellow cultivator from an allied sect, so she carefully tended to him. When Wenren He woke up, he saw a ray of sunlight fell across Bailey Qingmiao's face. Her body seemed to be shrouded in divine light. It was such a beautiful and mysterious sight. His heart was captured in an instant, and from that moment on, he vowed to protect and cherish this kind-hearted maiden in every way. Right now, Wenren He wanted to see how it would turn out when he met up with Bailey Qingmiao again under normal circumstances, without the factor of being injured, mental instability or the gratitude of having his life saved. Bailey Qingmiao was furious, her long hair fluttering with her spiritual energy. Wenren He examined her and found that her body was shrouded in a faint layer of divine light. Wenren He blinked, used his spiritual qi to see clearly, and still saw that light. When the book described Bailey Qingmiao from Wenren He's perspective, it would always use words like goddess and holy. He thought it was just figurative, but it turned out it wasn't just a description, she was actually surrounded by divine light. He glanced at Yin Hanjiang and Xu Yanyan out of the corners of his eyes, but they didn't seem to be seeing this light. Wenren He thought furiously and suddenly realized he cultivated the path of slaughter. He set out on this path 300 years ago, in the midst of a war. What was Bailey Qingmiao's role in her past life? She had been the goddess of disasters, sending plague, war and death to humankind. Bailey Qingmiao was currently 18 years old, which was to say, her heavenly tribulation in the divine realm was 18 years ago. Thus, that war 300 years ago that had led Wenren He to enter the Dao had been caused by Bailey Qingmiao's past incarnation. Effectively, Bailey Qingmiao was the reason Wenren He had awakened to the Dao, and she could be considered as a half Shifu to Wenren He. If Bailey Qingmiao hadn't reincarnated, Wenren He wouldn't have had to repay this karmic debt until he ascended to the divine realm. But she ended up reincarnating and meeting Wenren He. Unbeknownst to him, there was a debt of gratitude he had to pay to his Shifu in order to pass his own heavenly tribulations. So, that was it. End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 4. Two Birds with One Stone. Being the protagonist of a novel, Bailey Qingmiao's appearance was impeccable. She wore the buttercup yellow robe of the female disciples of Shangqing sect, hair tied in a simple bun with an ordinary multicolored string. A fresh peach blossom adorned in her hair, and her face held the same gentle flush as its petals. A few strands of hair fell elegantly across her forehead and framed her face, clear and free from cosmetics. She only wore a pair of light yellow bead earrings which enhanced her youthful appearance. Wenren he was engrossed with her divine light and hadn't noticed her appearance at all. Yin Hanjiang clutched his sword. In his eyes, this girl who had confronted Wenren he with hostile intent was already dead. He Wenzhao finally made it up the stairs. He had known Bailey Qingmiao for over 10 years and would have gotten used to her appearance no matter how beautiful she was. After getting to the second floor, all his attention was on Xu Yanyan. With a few coins, he sent one of the waiters to get a doctor who could treat fractures, then crouched near Xu Yanyan's chair and said anxiously, "Don't worry, Miss Xu, I'll make sure to get justice for you." Xu Yanyan. No way, was she the only one who noticed this little Bailey Qingmiao girl was really quite beautiful? Do these three men all have eye problems? And the one getting justice is clearly Bailey Qingmiao. What is he Wenzhao trying to get in on the action for? Even though she was filled with doubts, Xu Yanyan had a strong work ethic and remembered her task: seduce he Wenzhao. With effort, she placed her pale hand into he Wenzhao's considerably larger palm and said with eyes full of affection, "This maiden's life is as thin as paper. Being able to meet young Master He today is already the fortune of 3 lifetimes. Miss Bailey, you don't need to make enemies for someone like me. Even if you do, you can't beat them," Xu Yanyan grumbled in her heart. Bailey Qingmiao was still too young, barely at foundation establishment stage. He Wenzhao was a bit older but still only at core formation stage. Wenren he didn't need to do anything, and Yin Hanjiang didn't even need to unsheath his sword. He could kill these two Shangqing sect juniors with just one finger. Bailey Qingmiao was even more furious after hearing Xu Yanyan's words, and she also felt regretful. That day, he Wenzhao had wanted to call on Miss Xu, saying that some disciples met her in the small town a few days ago and helped her out. Even if it was a chance encounter, they had to take responsibility until the end. If they helped her but abandoned her halfway, this karma would be on them, and their heavenly tribulations would be harder in the future. They were supposed to come much earlier, but due to Bailey Qingmiao's jealousy, she had a quarrel with her Shikshan, he Wenzhao, about Lushija. They had originally planned to set out at 7 in the morning, but she had delayed them until 9. Her Shikshan's cultivation was much stronger than hers, and he could deduce the ways of heaven better than she could. Maybe today he'd gotten a feeling that something was wrong, and that's why he was anxious to leave early. If she had been just a bit earlier, maybe Miss Xu wouldn't have. While berating herself, Bailey Qingmiao heard Xu Yanyan's words and couldn't restrain her anger anymore. She reached out an arm, and the strip of silver silk around her waist, which clashed with the color of her clothes, moved of its own accord. This was the bonded weapon she had refined after attaining foundation establishment, the moonlit frost silk. As it uncoiled, it resembled a streak of silver light glittering under the full moon, sublime and beautiful. Shime. He Wenzhao was concerned about Xu Yanyan, but he was also worried for Bailey Qingmiao, whom he had taken care of throughout her childhood. Seeing her bring out her bonded weapon, he was anxious she would get hurt if her opponents turned out to be cultivators. He flashed in front of her, the sword on his back rising out of its sheath to float in the air, tip aimed at the two men. "Please don't get hurt for my sake," Xu Yanyan sobbed. All the guests in the cafe had already run off when Yin Hanjiang threw Xu Yanyan off, so the only people left on the second floor were the few of them who were involved in this confrontation. Yin Hanjiang's expression darkened. If the opposing side had already brought out their weapons, then he might as well. "Hanjiang." Wenren he held Yin Hanjiang's hand on his sword down, gripping it tightly, preventing him from killing the two protagonists in one stroke. Because Yin Hanjiang had lain in a pile of corpse for several days in his childhood, he still had the corpse chi left in his body. No matter how much he cultivated, his limbs were always chilled, and his hand was currently ice cold. Wenren he cultivation came from blood and war. His body temperature was much higher than that of ordinary people, so his hand was burning hot. Wrapped around Yin Hanjiang's hand, it slowly transferred warmth to it. As soon as Wenren he touched him, Yin Hanjiang didn't dare to move. It seemed to him that it would be improper to let even the tip of one finger brush against Wenrenhe's palm. With his hand this cold, Yin Hanjiang probably had some internal injury that was most likely left over from his childhood experience. This must be the reason why Yin Hanjiang was having a hard time advancing his cultivation, Wenrenhe thought. The treatment happened to be finding the strongest concentration of yang under the heavens, dwelling only in the bitterest frost, the novel snow flame. Yes, the very snow flame that Bailey Qingmiao nearly threw her life away to get for He Wenzhao. Wenrenhe wasn't interested in taking the protagonist's opportunity for himself. He was the #1 cultivator in the world and didn't need those kinds of things, but Yin Hanjiang did need the snow flame. He hadn't concerned himself with Yin Hanjiang for many years, just treating him as another subordinate. If it weren't for that book, he probably would have disregarded him forever. Thinking of how Yin Hanjiang had become so insane and obsessed after his death, Wenrenhe was emotionally moved and couldn't help but want to treat him a little better. Seeing as you two are honorable cultivators with profound powers, what need is there to pick a fight over a lowly woman? Wenrenhe didn't want to make an enemy of his half-shifu Bailey Qingmiao, so he decided to back down first. What did you say? Bailey Qingmiao got angrier at his words and tried to charge, but He Wenzhao blocked her way. At this point, Bailey Qingmiao had yet to suffer the cruelties of the novel and had a simple and frank outlook, unable to see these people's hidden agenda. He Wenzhao already had much more experience with the outside world and could see that Wenrenhe was likely of higher cultivation level than he let on. These two were so calm, what if they were at nascent soul stage already? His palms broke into a sweat and he mentally transmitted a message to Bailey Qingmiao, Shimei, they are not easy to deal with. I'll hold them off for now, you hurry back to the sect and ask for help quickly. In He Wenzhao's heart, Bailey Qingmiao was his beloved little Shimei whom he was dead set on protecting. Even if he died, he couldn't let his lovely Shimei get hurt. Shikshan, Bailey Qingmiao saw how tense and serious her Shikshan was and realized that they had run into high-level opponents. She felt frightened, as well as grateful. While they were transmitting messages and making plans, they were unaware that with how much lower their cultivation level were, the other three in the room could hear them loud and clear. Wenrenhe was a bit confused. He had already backed down, so how come the atmosphere had become even more tense? How should they end this? In the past, what did he usually do in these situations? It seems it was kill 'em all. He couldn't even remember the faces of the people who had picked fights with him in the past. Luckily, Xu Yanyan was there. As the Venerable One's right protector, she immediately saw through his thoughts and dragged her broken body to before the four of them, grabbing the silver piece on the table with a trembling hand. Young Master Miss Bailey, you don't need to get hurt for my sake. What this master said was right. I am no more than a lowly woman. She bitterly put the silver piece into her lapel herself and choked out, thank you, honored guests, for your generosity. While saying her lines, she mentally transmitted to Wenrenhe, I'm begging you, Venerable One, just say, since you know your manners, I'll save the Shangqing sect some face and avoid picking a fight with its juniors, and then go. I'm certain my acting has managed to hook him. Wenrenhe nodded and said woodenly, since you know your manners, I'll save the Shangqing sect some face and avoid picking a fight with its juniors. The moment he finished speaking, he grabbed Yin Hanjiang and disappeared. He Wenzhao and Bailey Qingmiao couldn't follow them even if they wanted to. Miss Xu. He Wenzhao frantically held Xu Yanyan in his arms, who had broken her bones and could only crawl. His heart ached incessantly for her. His cultivation was too low and he had no way of defeating those two who were probably in nascent soul cultivation stage. He could only let this frail but self-reliant woman who was like a lotus flower rising pristine from the mud humiliate herself to protect him. The fault was on him. Bailey Qingmiao looked at He Wenzhao holding Xu Yanyan, and also seeing Xu Yanyan's bleeding legs and her white dress which had already been stained half crimson, she couldn't bring herself to feel jealous. Miss Shu probably won't recover completely even if treated by a doctor. I'll return to the sect and bring Yao Shixian to help her. He Wenzhou nodded. All right, I'll take her home. After Bailey Qingmiao left, he picked Xu Yanyan up in his arms and brought her to her run-down thatch hut. Though the inside was shabby, it was clean and neat, with a few pieces of delicate embroidery hung on the walls. You could tell at one glance that the owner was a poor but honest and cultured maiden. He Wenzhou set Xu Yanyan carefully on her straw bed. Xu Yanyan had lost too much blood and was hovering on the edge of unconsciousness, her breathing growing faint. She weakly lifted her blood-stained fingers and said softly, "Young master, this lowly woman should have long since passed. There's no need for you." The moment her cold fingertips touched He Wenzhou's cheek, Xu Yanyan fainted, leaving a streak of blood down his face. "Miss Shu." He Wenzhou felt her pulse and found her life force extremely weak. He feared she couldn't wait for his shimei to fetch Yao Shidi. He gritted his teeth and said, "Sorry about this." He undid Xu Yanyan's sash. Seeing a silver piece fall out, he felt another pang in his heart. Putting aside the proprieties between men and women, he pressed his palm to the warmth of Xu Yanyan's chest and poured his spiritual energy into her, at the same time taking out a medicinal pill. It was true that ordinary people could not withstand the potency of a cultivator's medicine and couldn't take them directly. But if a cultivator was willing to use their spiritual power to help break down the medicine and guide it through the body, they could absorb it. The cultivator would lose some strength by doing this. Not often would cultivators waste their hard-earned spiritual essence on an ordinary person. Yao Shidi had drugs that would help an ordinary person take the pills, typically used for new disciples who couldn't absorb qi yet, but he couldn't wait any longer. He Wenzhou was at core formation stage and had a comfortable amount of spiritual essence. After his qi completed a circuit in Xu Yanyan's body, he fed the pill to her mouth, helping her absorb it. After a few minutes, Xu Yanyan was completely healed. He Wenzhou embraced her and breathed a small sigh of relief. Only then did he realize how he was holding the warm and pliant body in his arms, like. Why wasn't Shimei back yet? While pretending to be unconscious, Xu Yanyan sent a long-distance transmission to her underlings. "You guys, delay Bailey Qingmiao for me. I've almost got it. No matter what, don't let her bring that Yao Shixian to spoil my plans. No need to send your subordinates. I have delayed Bailey Qingmiao," a familiar deep voice sounded by Xu Yanyan's ear. "Xu Yanyan. Venerable One, how come you want to do it yourself again? This subordinate doesn't wish to trouble you, nothing good could come from you being involved." Though she shed tears in her heart, she was fully in control on the surface. She opened her eyes with a soft cry and finding herself lying in He Wenzhou's lap, with her clothes. She exclaimed weakly and her face turned bright red. Asterisk. Elsewhere, Bailey Qingmiao once again brought out the moonlit frost silk, her expression grim as she faced off against Wenren He and Yin Hanjiang. Wenren He forbade Yin Hanjiang from doing anything. He extended a finger and tapped the silver silk once lightly. Bailey Qingmiao's bonded weapon quietly returned within her body, and found out that she was unable to exert any spiritual power. At this moment, Bailey Qingmiao finally realized the extent of her opponent's strength. She had grown up at Shangqing sect and have not really traveled the world before. As a cultivator, she had beaten countless woolen martial artists, but she never expected such hidden masters to be mingling amongst the populace at the foot of the mountain. Her Shixian was far more experienced and had probably already seen through these people's strengths back then, yet he still stood his ground in front of her. Her Shixian treated her so well that he was willing to risk his life for her, yet she was always throwing tantrums and distrusting him. It turned out that she had really wronged him. "If you want to kill me, then go ahead. If I even flinch, then I'm not worthy of being a disciple of Shangqing sect," Bailey Qingmiao said resolutely. When Wenren He heard her, he thought that he really couldn't understand how her brain works. He spoke evenly, Don't misunderstand Miss Bailey. This this one purposely sought you out as I have a request of you. As soon as he slightly raised his hand, 3 elegant chairs appeared in the barren mountain. They didn't come from his kinkin pouch but were transparent chairs condensed from the spiritual energy of the mountains. Mahayana cultivators could connect to the heavens and the earth and manifest their will with a thought. Oftentimes cultivators at this stage wouldn't lightly use their magic weapons, and could create weapons out of ambient spiritual energy to attack their opponents. Wenren made a gesture for Bailey Qingmiao to help herself. After a trembling Bailey Qingmiao sat down, he sat as well. Usually he would sit first, but he had to show the proper respect to his half-shifu, so he offered the seat to Bailey Qingmiao first. One of the 3 chairs was for Yin Hanjiang, but Yin Hanjiang didn't sit but instead stood behind Wenren without a word. In front of Bailey Qingmiao, Wenren didn't force it and instead spoke to the female lead. Miss Bailey, you can probably tell that with our strength, we have no need to trouble an ordinary person. Earlier, I had seen you walk by downstairs and merely threw down an object to catch your attention. Bailey Qingmiao was furious but the people she was facing were too powerful. Holding herself back with fists clenched, she said, that was a person, not an object. Really? Wenren flicked a finger and an ant crawling across the ground was whisked up by a gust of wind and landed on Bailey Qingmiao's knee. What difference between that and this, he said indifferently. The ant struggled to crawl on Bailey Qingmiao's leg. She lifted it with one hand and set it on the ground. They are different, she said in a shaky voice. But both that woman and this ant are innocent. Has Miss Bailey ever eaten meat? Wenren asked. Bailey Qingmiao didn't say anything. Cultivators past foundation establishment stage could go without food and sustain themselves on the qi of the environment. She established her foundation a year ago and had grown up eating mortal food for the previous 17 years. She could only shake her head and say, that's not the same. As a cultivator, you should know that all life under heaven goes to the same destination, and all things have their own awareness. There is no distinction between man and other living beings, Wenren said. We as cultivators absorb the spiritual energy of the environment. Do you know how many lives that energy could have given rise to? Shangqing sect has occupied its spiritual mountain for centuries. Do you know how many unique creatures and spiritual beings that mountain sustained in ancient times? Why is it that none of them were left now? Because human beings cultivating on that mountain have seized all the spiritual energy. That mountain is no longer able to give rise to mystical creatures. Bailey Qingmiao had been a cultivator for only a short time and had no way to refute Wenren's words. She grew confused as she felt like her old worldview had been toppled over. Her spiritual essence ran wild out of her control, and felt sharp pains as if a knife was stabbing her internal organs. Wenren wasn't willing to just watch his half-shifu have a qi deviation, and so he changed angle and said, there's no need to blame yourself for this. Human race is currently the chief of all living things, and this was also decided by fate. In the ancient times of gods and demons, humanity suffered endlessly. Any beast of the land or air, or deadly flower or tree, could treat human beings as its prey, refine their bodies into magic tools or absorb their souls. Now, the fact that humanity has the upper hand can be seen as nothing more than the revolution of fortunes. Hearing this, Bailey Qingmiao's expression eased as the confusion in her mind cleared up and she managed to retain her calm. She closed her eyes and meditated in silence. After a quarter hour, she opened her eyes, stood, and saluted toward Wenren. Thanks to this master for the guidance. Wenren waved a hand. It was hardly anything. I just randomly said some truths of heaven. The fact that you were able to comprehend shows that you're naturally suited to cultivate the path of indifference. When you cultivate in the future, don't choose the wrong path. Bailey Qingmiao had just become enlightened to a principle of heaven, and the expression in her eyes was currently far from that of the innocent young girl she had been. Underneath her long lashes, her eyes were dispassionate yet held compassion, and though she was looking at that ant, she also seemed to be looking at nothing at all. Wenren looked upon her with approval, but in the next instant, Bailey King Miao's eyes brightened. Coming back to her senses, she said, Shixing and Miss Shu are still waiting for the medicine. Her eyes twinkled like stars, resembling once more the love-struck girl from before. No need for concern, that woman is fine, Wenren said. I came to you because I needed you to help me retrieve something. Elder just guided me in my cultivation. This Bailey is deeply grateful. If there's anything I can do to help the elder, I would not hesitate to do so, Bailey Qingmiao said. I am looking for the spiritual treasure called the Snow Flame, to help my sub-friend recover from his injury, said Wenren. Yin Hanjiang looked at Wenren in astonishment. I have heard of the Snow Flame from my Shifu before. It appears in the 1,000-mile ice plains, and no one knows its exact location. Any cultivator below core formation stage who enters would almost certainly die. Elder, your cultivation is profound. Can this junior really be of use? Bailey Qingmiao said in confusion. The Snow Flame is fated to be yours, Wenren replied. Other people can't take it? We can only have it with your permission. Everything has its predetermined outcome and one cannot obtain everything just by having power. Actually, they could just follow Bailey Qingmiao and after she obtained the treasure, take it from her. This would be the way of a demonic cultivator. But Wenren couldn't steal something from his Shifu and he didn't want to do something as lowly as rob another person of their fortune either. He wanted to make an exchange. I can help you ascend to divinity. I can help you comprehend the Dao. I can assist you in obtaining the things you want, all in return for the Snow Flame. Wenren thought this was a fine idea which could repay his debt to his half-Shifu while helping Yin Hanjiang at the same time. He secretly pat his own back for his own quick thinking. Behind his back and unbeknownst to him, Yin Hanjiang's eyes were faintly rimmed in red. Yin Hanjiang bowed his head, hiding his eyes, and spoke hoarsely. Venerable. Wenren with a sweep of a gold-embroidered black sleeve, cut off Yin Hanjiang's words. He mentally transmitted to him, this Venerable One is giving it to you, so you're not allowed to refuse. End chapter.